AXE2Cap, let me put you on game. AXE2Cap, look at all that you could gain. Business moves, loans, and grants, it's all a part of the game. You could learn all of this, let the Queen Sheba explain. AXE2Cap.
Thank you so much, all of you, for being here. I will ask you to introduce yourselves and your businesses in 1 second. But first, I would love to hear more about the journey that shaped you. As we start to talk more about the soul work and releasing this information across Sheba platforms, we want to normalize this conversation for individuals who may shy away from receiving the mental health support services. We know it's not easy. We know it takes a lot of courage, and we know that it takes tangible, approachable individuals such as yourselves to create that space. So before we get started, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Miss Ava to introduce herself, and then we'll move on to Miss Tasha Rose and then Miss Wendy afterwards.
Thank you so much for having me here today, Sansara. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk about work that I do, but also in particular mental health as entrepreneurs, how we manage our overall health, which includes mental health, while we do what we do. So I am Ava Hart, a licensed clinical social worker. I'm in private practice in Middletown. I not only have a very robust, full private practice where I primarily do trauma therapy. I also am the CEO and founder of the Heart Wellness Collaborative, which is a nonprofit also out of Middletown. And the function of the Heart Wellness Collaborative is to provide community education around mental health, also to provide group services. So we are in the throes of getting our youth mentoring program up and running. We're extremely excited to collaborate with PAL in Middletown and youth services, and that's very exciting. In terms of the way I came to this work, as a clinical therapist, I got to this place by doing other types of work. I was a child care provider a long time ago. I also went from that to doing some work for mental health institutions. And eventually it came to me that I was really good at the one-on-one work with individuals. I was really good at educating. And so I decided, you know what, maybe I should do this. And so I got my MSW. And when I started working for the Center for Behavioral Health at Middlesex Hospital, I was the director for the maternal and child health, which included Early Head Start, which is a federally funded program. So I was basically forced to get my license, which is fine because that's how I got to where I am.
Yay.
Right. So thanks to the federal government, I was forced to get my license, and I now have a private practice, and I'm doing all this fun work with people and individuals and groups. And because of COVID and the lack of resources, I developed a culturally responsive group treatment protocol, as well as a bilateral stimulation device that enables me to work with up to 12 to 24 people at once. And so that's where I am. And thank you so much for having me. And I hope I've said enough.
Beautiful. I love that for you. And congratulations on the work that you are doing and the work that you have done. I'm super excited to see where your journey is going to take you next. All right. Dr. Tasha Rose, ma'am.
I'm Dr. Tasha Rose. I am a licensed professional counselor. I am the owner of Let's Talk About It Counseling Services in Bloomfield, where I practice faith-based counseling. And I work with males, females, couples, children, 14 and up. I also founded the Trauma Series, which is quarterly trauma symposiums where I pick different topics that cause trauma, and we kind of have a panelist of experts to kind of talk with the attendees. It is something that I've been doing since October of last year, so we are almost full circle for 1 year, and I'm excited. The next one will be in grief. I also have a program called Faith Series. It's going to be a 6-month program for women uncovering that trauma that they have experienced either as a young adult or adolescent or childhood. And then I have a program that I do which is Chats in the Park in Elizabeth Park, and that's every Thursday from 6 to 8. And it is really an open forum for women to just come together and talk womanhood, many different topics we work with. And I'm not really in that clinical capacity. It is really like a girlfriend girlfriendship, sisterhoodship, and it's been amazing. Unconventionally, I went to school for engineering. I hated it, so I completed 1 year with them, and I never went back. And then I ended up coming back home. I went to school for legal studies. I was a paralegal for 10 years. And in that time, I saw a lot of what was happening. And then I also worked in personal injury, which also caused me to see some of the things that our community was going through. From there, I went back to school and I ended up getting my master's in clinical mental health. I started working in some community organizations. I managed a couple of facilities for the Chrysalis Center, which again, I started to find my way understanding that people would come to me even if they wasn't on my caseload, if I didn't manage them. And then I was a manager at the Connection, and I worked with recently released inmates who had co-occurring disorders, or they were coming from CVH pretty much, or prison due to either insanity kind of defenses or drug and alcohol use. And that time I was like, yeah, this is what I need to be doing. I had a staff of 20 where I constantly had my weekly conversations with them, and I found myself counseling. I found myself lifting them up and encouraging them. And then when my dad passed away in 2020 through a car accident, I left that job. I was out of work for about a year. And during that time that I was out of work, I started my doctorate program, and I wanted to use that in order to get back into either hospitals, clinics, and just organizations around Hartford or around the Hartford County in order to help clients. And then in 2023, God told me I had to open my own practice. And by doing that, I've been able to scale to places where they need me, like my community need me. And I can do a practice of therapy that if I worked for an organization, I wouldn't be able to do. So that is a little bit about me. And that's where I'm at today.
Beautiful, beautiful. That is a heavy lift, my sister. Recidivism programs are not always easy, and I think the work you are doing is God's work, so keep up the good work. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Tasha Rose. Miss Wendy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for
Hello.
having me. I am so excited to share the stage with Ava and Dr. Tasha. This is amazing. So my name is Dr. Wendy Garvin Mayo. I am a nurse practitioner by training. I'm also a stress management and emotional intelligence subject matter expert and mental health advocate. I am the founder and CEO of Collaborative Cancer Care. We help cancer patients and caregivers and family members study their mind when a cancer diagnosis really disrupts their life. Our company right now, we are in the process of starting the Collaborative Cancer Care Institute and launching the OncoEQ certification program for healthcare professionals, because we need all oncology healthcare professionals to really know how to manage the mental and emotional impact of a cancer diagnosis on patients and caregivers. My business was started last year. However, I wrote a business plan about my business about 9 years ago, and I didn't have the courage, confidence, or skills to actually launch it. And last year in February, I had to birth this vision. And I did, and I've just been going ever since. And it has been the most fulfilling thing I have done. Like you said, you're doing God's work. I am doing God's work.
It's beautiful.
Every day.
That's beautiful. I
Yes.
absolutely love that for you. Isn't it liberating?
It is. It really
So
is.
liberating. So we're going to jump right into this and get into it. Miss Wendy, I want you to stay right where you are and talk to us a little bit about how to cope with the emotional ups and downs of running your business and being the superwoman that you need to be for your clients and partners.
Yeah, so one, I think it's really being confident in what you know and what you don't know. That's really important. As an entrepreneur, I think sometimes we want to do and be everything. And I think it's a scarcity mindset when we don't want to tell this person this, we don't want to share this, we don't want this person to help, because and I think that's scarcity. But the way you really manage your business, you need help. You need to bring people into the fold to really help you birth the vision. Now, will people mimic and try to model you? Yes, but no one's going to do it like you. And that's where the confidence come in. You got to be real confident in yourself. So it's really important to have the confidence, bring in help, and also get the right mentorship. That's what really helped me launch my business, true mentorship and coaching, business coaching, to get the skills that I never possessed, but they are skills that I have for a lifetime.
I love
So
it.
it's not easy. It sounds easy the way I'm saying it. It's not easy, but you definitely have to really, it starts with you. You as
Mm,
the entrepreneur, understanding your value,
hmm.
understanding your impact, and knowing that you cannot really expand and scale on your own.
Yeah,
You need a team.
absolutely. Absolutely. And going beyond gatekeeping, because that's what I heard. It's all about the fear of gatekeeping and
Absolutely.
somebody trying to take your stuff. Now, listen, because that's a real thing. People out there trying to
Oh, yeah.
steal, beg, and borrow all your
Yep.
information, intellectual property. And at the end of the day, I 150% agree. What is yours, and can't nobody do it the way you can do it. So, absolutely. Love that. Miss Ava, talk to us a little bit about how we cope with those moments where you feel overwhelmed. How do you manage those feelings and those emotions? Like, what are some strategies, tools, and tips that we can utilize to help us manage and deal?
Many of us and many entrepreneurs and founders work alone at the top. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it often leads to us not having the emotional support that we need, because there aren't many of us there, right?
Right.
And so what I do is I stay connected and grounded, by staying connected with my family. I balance work with family life, spending time with family, answering the calls for people when they reach out, right? But like I said, balance, because I have a lot of retired family members and they just call in the middle of the day, right? So I got to
Right.
remind
Right.
them I'm not retired. Like, I got a
Right.
job. And so some of that, so I got to actually, you might know, I have a friend, Dr. Althea Bates. She talks about her 3 B's,
Yep.
boundaries, blocking, and bandwidth. And
Yep.
so that helps. Like, when you think about having boundaries with folks around you,
Right.
not just my clients, but having boundaries with my family members, it's okay for me to say no to that thing in order for me to say yes to myself. As we move into this new world of entrepreneurship and all the things that entails, we might have to leave some folks and some of our old things behind. And so that's when the blocking comes into play. Some folks
Mhm.
might got, I mean, literally and figuratively may have to be blocked.
I love that. I love everything that you're saying to normalize the conversation of self-care, right? Because that isolation, I would say this is how I felt. Like I was on punishment somehow. Like I've just been set apart and put in the corner, and I'm just here by myself trying to toe this line, and I'm all in this game by myself, and it's heavy. It gets extremely heavy. And so when you don't have those mentors and that support system, how do you cope and deal with recharging or transitioning your mental health into a space that is healthy, Dr. Tasha, that is motivating, that keeps you inspired? Talk to me a little bit about that.
One of the things that I do believe is, as a clinician, you have to be good with yourself. You have
Mm.
to believe in yourself, and you have to know that you have what it takes to be happy. Because I am a faith based therapist, I do believe that joy comes from God. And even when I'm having a bad day, I have to remember that God has given me joy, and He's put me in the space that I am in. And one of my favorite songs is Only One Night. I can be in my feelings, I can feel lonely, but it can't last longer than a night, because after that, then I'm not in the will of God. And so that's one of the things that how I keep myself grounded, because when I say that God is real, it's not something I just say. It's not just rhetoric. It is the most truth that you can't take me off. So I keep myself grounded in that. Um, I also like to do yard work. So if I have a long day, or if I feel like no one's checking on me, or I don't have anybody to
Mm.
talk to, I go in that yard. As I'm doing that, I talk to my dad, right? My father is no longer here in on earth, but he is here in spirit. So I talk to my dad as I'm doing that. I told you guys before, I do Legos. When every Tuesday, I don't care what anybody is doing, don't bother me after 7 o'clock, because I'm doing Legos and then I'm going to bed. I like to read often. I like to create new things for my business. I'm constantly creating because right now I might be lonely, but if I'm lonely and I'm feeling like I can't do anything, my business is going to end. And the last thing is I have therapy once a month. And every time I go in, she knows we pray in and then I just talk. People pour their stuff into me every single day. And I have to have something to keep myself from falling apart. So as they pour into me, I pray it out back to God and then I do all those other things.
Beautiful. That's some good soul work there. Talk to us a little bit about how you navigate conversations and discussions with the individual who doesn't feel like they need any soul work or they need any clinical or therapeutic work or they need any support and guidance. Give us some tools and tips on how to navigate those discussions with those type of people.
So I would say it starts with self-awareness. People have to be self-aware. And I always say, the power of the pause is so important because as humans, we evolve.
Mhm.
And where you are today, you may be somewhere else tomorrow. When you say people who are resistant is because they're not self-aware. Therapy, counseling, counsel, whatever you want to call it, is essential to the soul. And you really need that outlet. That's not friends, that's not family. And I also want to just say it's important for you to understand your capacity. And Ava, I wanted to hop on the B train with builders and blockers, understanding what your builders are, right? Understanding what your blockers are. So what are those limitations? What are those things that suppress you? What are those things that get you out of the mood? What are those things that trigger you? That's self-aware, right? But understanding things that build you. What do you need? And as an entrepreneur, you are shifting, you're becoming, right? Again, the B's, you're becoming. So when you're becoming, you have to shift and do things differently, but it's really being real with yourself. People that say, oh, I don't want therapy, it's because they're not really self-aware. I always tell people therapy is a conversation,
Yeah.
right? It's to help you process, right?
Yeah.
And they have these experts who have different tools of helping you process, helping you realize things, asking you those thought-provoking questions. It's essential. Again, helping you see yourself.
Yeah, I love
So
that. I love that.
that's what I would say.
Sansaray, in EMDR, we we have a term called a blocking belief. And basically what that is when we're helping people to process or reprocess trauma, often they'll get stuck. And sometimes when they get stuck, it's because they have a blocking belief, meaning there's something inside of them, like a belief system about a thing that will not allow them to move on. So, for example, let's say in my community, some folks may not gravitate towards therapy because the belief is deep rooted, right? Is if you go to see a therapist, there's something wrong with you. You're crazy, right? And so, and so that's on the surface level. Like most people know that that's a thing, but there could be other, right? But here's some of the other blocking beliefs. If someone grew up in an environment where they never talked about mental health, but they witnessed somebody struggling, going to and from the hospital, dealing with anxiety. Back in the day, my grandmother and all of them used to say, I got bad nerves. Well, today we call that anxiety. Right.
I
And so
remember
now
that.
exactly, I got bad nerves. And we say all kinds of funny little things that we have new terms for today.
Yeah.
And so, like Dr. Wendy said, it really is about like lack of self-awareness. And some of the reasons why we're unaware is because things are living in our subconscious. It is not in our conscious mind, and it's why we often stay stuck.
Right.
I
Interesting.
I think for me, I'm a talker, right? So when people are really resistant to therapy,
Yeah.
I'm really big with like just conversing with them. I'll just sit and talk with them and then at the end I'm like, so you still don't want to go to therapy? And they're like, no. I'm like, but you just had a therapy session, and it was for free. And they're like, no, therapy isn't like that. And then I have an opportunity to then tell them like you have to pick your therapist the way that you pick your physician, the way that you pick the right pair of shoes. If it feels good to you, you go there and you just it's a friend that's not a real friend, right?
Right.
It's not a friend that you go and have drinks with, but that's a friend that's going to come and see you where you are and help you understand. And so Dr. Wendy said it, Miss Ava said it, you have to be aware of yourself. And a lot of people are very avoidant to this because avoidance is made by fear, right? So I always come with these people that they'll tell me, oh, you always trying to analyze. And I'm like, but was I right? Was I right?
Right.
Because
Right.
at the end of the day, you're only going to come at me weird is that there's some truth to what I just said to you. So that's how I get people to talk.
I love that. I love that. It's interesting, right? Because we've been having these conversations, and I'll just say, as a Black woman that's been in the corporate HR space, and sitting down and talking to employees for the last 3 decades, having conversations with them about their mental health, but not calling it that, would make them more productive. I remember one of my business partners saying to me, why is it always a line coming out of your office? People don't normally like to go to HR. Why is it everybody want to go to HR? And I laughed, right? Because I became tangible to these individuals. I became a normal person that they could talk to, that didn't regurgitate their information, that they felt safe with. And so I love everything that you all are saying. How do we normalize these conversations to make our community and our teams and our family feel more safe to trust us with this information?
I personally feel like using terms like, have you ever had anybody in your family that, people say, oh, they're touched, or, they had high sugar, or their nerves were bad, or they always got something going on with them, or they're always like hyper. And they'll be like, yeah. I'm like, well, do you understand what that is? Like, did you like to see them that way? Like, really trying to make it so normal that they don't even know what you're doing. I put them into words that you're speaking on a everyday basis. And then when they start asking questions, then I bring the terms in. So that's how I kind of help people normalize trauma, normalize the fact that they have some mental health issues. Because if I come at them and tell them that you're presenting bipolar symptoms, or you have some of these tendencies, they're automatically going to run. But if I say to them, it sounds like you have a hard time focusing. It sounds like sometimes you might think there's something going on in your head and it's not there, or you misplace things, or you're repeating yourself, or you don't want to do this. And then they're like, yeah, how you know that? And I'm like, well, that sounds a little bit like there might be something going on that is not your fault. So how can we talk about this? But sometimes the mental health word, it scares people because they really feel like they're going crazy. So I just use the regular words.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can say a little bit about my approach, the way that I work, and the people that that work with me. I encourage us all to really just validate one's experience. And so what I've learned is, when dealing with folks in any setting, work setting, and when I say work, I mean like corporate setting, validating what a person is saying can get you a long way, right? As opposed to invalidating, right? And so once somebody feels as though you see them and you hear them, then they're more likely to engage in conversation with you. And then I start to talk about all the reasons and why, all the reasons why people don't engage in therapy, because we live in a society, for one, that promotes substance use. You can use this drug. You can smoke weed. You can drink anytime you want. There's lots of sex on TV. Like, there's so many outs. Like, if you're feeling crappy, just go do one of these other things. And so there's so many other reasons why people don't have to treat their mental health, because they have all these other outs in our toxic environment, right? Of course. But what happens is, when people are completely disconnected from themselves, from who they really are, they go for things like the substance use and drug use and sex and all the bad, toxic, unhealthy relationships, watching garbage on television, what we take in, like all the toxic things that we do to ourselves when we're feeling crappy. We literally make ourselves feel worse.
I was going to add, I think we need to start talking more about mental health to the younger generation. right? Because they're at a point where they're at a pivotal point in their lives where they can have these conversations in their circles and at home.
I think she had a couple of technical issues, but I'm sure she'll be back to explain what she was saying, because wasn't it good? It was so good. But she got to the good part. And then all of a sudden, she's absolutely right with normalizing those conversations with our family and having those discussions. And I can recall going to a friend's house and one of the aunties leaning in and saying, "Now, baby girl, I'm gonna need you to go over there and sit down. Don't mess with Uncle, whatever his name was. Don't sit on his lap. Don't look at him too long." Because you know he got some tinkering symbols up there. And so, and our community has created some form of humor that go along with justifying how they're saying what they're saying. Certain cultures, we do certain things to cope and to deal. So, with that being said, as we're normalizing these conversations and having these discussions with the younger generation to help them navigate the waters, right? Because we've been through some things, we've seen some things. The younger generation are now starting to scratch the surface on some of them things. How do we help them, especially the young entrepreneurs who are just starting out and have yet to scratch the surface on some of these obstacles, some of these barriers that they may encounter?
So what I'm learning through my work with young people is that the stigma of mental health has actually decreased. So young people, they come in with a laundry list of diagnoses. It's actually the opposite. Like, we got to tell them, like, no, you don't have that. No,
Right.
no, no, you don't got that either. I feel like a lot of times I'm actually normalizing, like, it's it's normal to feel distracted when you're under a lot of stress. Like, it's
Right.
normal to have memory loss when you've had a traumatic experience.
Right.
And I think some of it is really about just normalizing one's experience, whatever that experience is, and also helping people identify their values, how they
Mm.
feel, how they think, how they act, how they behave, and the consequences of behaving in ways that are inconsistent with their values. And that's a big thing that I use often to help people
Wow.
identify parts that they want to change.
The conversation we're having here is digging down to uproot to the thing that was the root that was planted in us, that maybe we seen a mother or auntie or a grandfather or whoever do it, right? So we picked that up along the way. How do we not allow that to sabotage who we are, our relationships and our businesses?
Awareness and accountability. It's hard to be introspective, particularly when you're at the top, right? Because you by
Mhm. Right.
yourself. It's hard
Right.
to be introspective when you're the boss, because a lot of people won't tell you what
The
your
truth.
shortcomings are,
Right.
right? They won't tell you the truth. But what will happen is you'll start to hear the themes. Like, your kids might say something, your boss might say something similar,
Right.
you might be out in the world and something happens and it comes up again. And so in terms of accountability, you gotta take note. Like, take
Right.
notice. When you notice that there's a theme and everybody's saying something similar about you, just consider it. Accountability can be radical. When we
Right.
hold ourselves accountable and we hold others accountable for the things that we do and don't do, man, life can be so easy.
Yes. Yes.
But I just wanted to say,
Absolutely.
because I am a trauma therapist, just to answer that question that you asked, I try to teach new entrepreneurs the right way, right?
Mm.
I have four young ladies. They're all 14 and 15. They're around that age. And all of them have this talent. I don't do a lot of talk therapy. We do activity therapy.
Mm.
So right now, I have one young lady who will be crocheting animals and
Mhm.
selling them at a fair in her town. And so I asked her if she had an LLC. She says, "No, I can't have that. I'm a little girl." I said, "Okay, well, talk to dad, brought dad in, explained to him what she, what they would need to do to help her, get herself together. Asked her dad all these other questions that I feel that she needs right now to protect herself, get a bank account, all that stuff."
Mhm.
And one of the things that the dad said to me was that he wished that someone would have tried to explain to him, because he's tried to open businesses and they failed. And I said, "Well,
Mm.
even if you do it the right way, sometimes it can fail. But what happens if you do it the right way, if you put things in order, you'll have a better opportunity to recover, right?
Right.
So I'm all about mitigating trauma. So I don't want this young girl to go out and do all these great things and get really great with what she's doing, because she was saying she was going to be with her friend. And I'm like, a contract needs to be done. Don't do anything until you get it. Even if it's a little written contract, we will get 50% of the proceeds, because you don't want to mess up a relationship and not have the paper behind it. So
Yeah.
I like to do that to try to help them, because I didn't have that. So I try to do that with young entrepreneurs that I work with, to just try to show them how to do the right steps, and also like help the parents help them make the right choices.
I love that.
One more thing. So when we're able to be accountable and recognize our shortcomings, we are able to identify some of the areas that we are vulnerable in or weak in, and that's when you ask for help, right? And that's when you learn how to delegate. And it's sad. Sometimes it takes for us to get to be completely exhausted, overwhelmed, yelling at folks to realize we need to ask for help. And
Right.
so if we walk away from anything in this conversation, I hope that it is be vulnerable enough to seek help when you need it.
Yes, yes, yes. That is a great transition point, and you ladies have done a phenomenal job. We'll have to bring Ms. Wendy back on and keep this conversation going during the Soul Work series. I don't think it stops here. Before we wrap up, though, what is one last thought you would like to leave an aspiring entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur, a seasoned entrepreneur around minding their business and their mental health?
So combining those together, self-forgiveness, because we are going to make mistakes. Finances are going to be a little shaky. You may be running out of time, but working yourself to pieces. But
Right.
forgive yourself for the mistakes. Self-forgiveness is important, because what that will lead to is, if you don't forgive yourself, is you'll have negative belief systems about yourself and imposter syndrome, right? Who do I think I am to be doing this thing? If we can nip that in the bud by just acknowledging that we're going to make mistakes, and we're already forgiven. Once I saw Joe Osteen talking about self-forgiveness, and he said, forgive yourself, God has already forgiven you. And I say that in my head 1,000,000 times a day.
Beautiful. I love that.
I would say, don't let anything consume you. If it's
Mm.
consuming you, you need to let it go. And anything that's confusing, you need to let it go. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, they see something, they see a fad, they see something that's exciting, and they want to try it. But if you're really confused about which way you want to go, which way, how it's going to work, that's not your gift. And if it's something that's consuming you, you will never learn how to do self-care. I've heard people tell me, when you have your own business, you got to do all these hours. And I like to tell people, then what happens when you're not there to do the job? If you're unable to make sure that you're getting rest and you're taking time for yourself, if you're not doing those things, you're going to burn out, and you're going to burn out to a spot where you can't come back. And so I always just try to tell people, don't consume yourself with anything that you can't work on self. Because if you can't work on yourself, then you will not be good for business or anybody that walks into that business.
I love that. All right. Well, listen, that's a perfect place for us to hit the pause button. Until next time, ladies, thank you so much for your investment in Sheba, your investment in others, and your investment in the work that you do. I look forward to having you back on the Soul Work series at another time, on another day, so that we can continue this discussion. I think it was invaluable and powerful. Thank you so much for being here with Sheba, our AXE2Cap podcast platform, as well as our digital platform, social media outlets. We look forward to what's next for you and your businesses. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
AXE2Cap, let me put you on game. AXE2Cap, look at all that you could gain. Business moves, loans, and grants, it's all a part of the game. You could learn all of this that the Queen Sheba explained. AXE2Cap, let me put you